I like that's the downside with weed. I wish weed had the effect of alcohol. Like, so if I could trade the effects, I would rather be drunk from smoking, you know?
Like, I don't understand. What is it about alcohol that you're missing?
Okay, this is such a high thought. I realized I didn't connect any dots. Okay, so like, if I could switch them, so like if you drank a beer and you got high,
Yeah.
and if you smoked, you got drunk.
Winners use drugs.
Thank you. I thought this week we could start with how you ruined weed for me, you son of a bitch.
Cool. I'm into that one.
You broke my cognitive dissonance
Oh yeah.
last week. So I was waiting because I mean, you know, I'm an impulsive person. So when I first smoked my first joint and it was not enjoyable, I wanted to text you immediately to be like, "Hey, fuckface, thanks for ruining one of the things I love more in my most of my life." So yeah, something about our conversation, I can't remember if it was on the podcast or not, was about like, you know, you being like, "Oh, I wouldn't smoke it. It's not good for my health."
Oh yeah.
That like connected with me, like you taking care of your health. Like I'm like, oh, I guess it really is like a carcinogen. Like you're lighting it on fire. Like, you know, like I know this, I've always known this rationally, but it never clicked until you were talking about your health.
Right.
And then it, like something about that like was like, well, you know, if Jason cares about his health, like or like knows that like this is bad for his health, like maybe you should stop doing it too. And so anyways, it was not nearly as enjoyable smoking.
Yeah, well, I'll say again, you got to try out the vape
No, but I hate you so much now. Like my favorite thing was smoking, and now neither option is accessible to me without like
yeah, but you
knowingly
said,
destroying my body. There's no
said
cognitive
that
dissonance.
like the reason why you like smoking weed is because it has that like punch you in the face effect, right?
Yeah, but it's more about the ritual of roll. Like, you know how excited I was to buy coffee? Like, this is my first, like, home brewed coffee in, like, 6 months. Right. So, like, I was like, I'm so excited to have this in a joint. And, like, yeah. And so, yeah, I sat out there this morning, smoked a whole joint. Perfect. And, like, yeah, I don't know. But it's perfect. But now I'm like,
Yeah, I always forget, but like I understand the ritual. It is great, and I remember missing it too. Just I always really like rolling joints.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
I want to get, it's something tangible that you kind of have incentive to get better at.
Right.
And it's not that challenging. It's, you know,
yeah,
like it's low stakes. Like if you fuck up a joint, what do? You just pull a new paper, re-roll it.
True. Although you have already kind of compressed the weed into like a log, right?
Yeah, but so what?
Like
so what? Then you can put, you know, what you're going to be like, this was compressed weed. We better throw this out.
Yeah, well, I'm just
like,
saying it's better when you get it on the first try. That's the best, right?
Sure.
Obviously.
I don't think weed suffers from being lightly compressed after being grinded.
True.
You know,
true.
Like it's kind of like, we've been ground for the last few minutes to get us in the state to pour us in the weed, like in the paper.
Yeah.
So why would light compression be like, well, the THC is breaking apart now?
Well, because I always found like just to stick with my guns here, I always found that like when you would roll a joint and it wouldn't work and you got to redo it, you have this like kind of compressed log of weed that you got to break up,
Mhm.
and then your hands are sticky, so you're getting kind of like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bit of
Residue.
the residue on your fingers, and it maybe you haven't got it perfectly as consistent in the grind as it was prior, right? A lot of
Mhm.
that sort of things. I mean, it's a very trivial gripe to make, but
Yeah.
that's
These
something I
are-
remember.
These are my favorite kind of like weird things to get into with people, like that you don't realize like your views are so different on something that really doesn't matter.
Right, sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like it's like you can hardcore argue. Why is it so fun? Why is it so fun to argue low stakes things?
Yeah, that's because there's no core beliefs involved, right? That are going to challenge like what you see as your identity, right?
Yeah. Like if we argue about movies, neither of us is going to take that personally.
True.
Right. Yeah. And why is it so fun to argue?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's kind of either you argue with people or I kind of see like there's like two default things. Either you're funny with friends or you're arguing with friends.
Right. Totally. Yeah, like I'm not the kind of person. I see this a lot, and I never understood it, where people will say something in a group, and everyone else will just agree with them, be like, yes, that's true, or I'm totally that way as well, and I don't understand that because those kind of circumstances, like, why are we talking about this then?
Yeah.
If we both agree,
If we all
let's
agree.
move on to something else, right?
Everybody agreeing can be one of the worst kind of outings or the
Right.
best kind of outings. Like if you haven't had many of those group, like you feel like a normal person, then
Yeah.
it can feel great. But as you said, like you need people that are going to offer the different perspective just to get.
Yeah, like I think there's two things that I like about having disagreements. Is one, it's a way to test my ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, for example, the thing we were just talking about with re-rolling joints, it's like that idea never has been brought out into the world to see how well it flies, right?
Yeah.
It's just something I thought, and I never challenged it myself, right? So having it brought out in a conversation, now I can actually think, how legitimate of a thought was that really, right?
Yeah.
And see how other people react to it,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, right? That's what I like about it.
I realized that most of my idea, like most of the things on that note, like most of the things that I think are insane, when I voice it to the world, people totally agree. And like I find like, oh no, you're not insane. Like most people have this common sense view of the world.
Right.
Like it is just this crazy like internet view that's like,
True.
Totally skewing shit. Like I think that's where between what.
But what is that? Like, I don't understand. Like, how come the people that we meet in real life are so different than the perspectives we see online? Like, those people have to be real people somewhere, don't they?
Yeah, but time spent online. I don't think normal people really seek to spend hours and hours and hours writing comments. Like
Yeah.
like I think if you broke it down, because like they were saying how like 5% of the accounts of Twitter account for 85% of the tweets.
Right.
It's like those are either bots or people that are home a lot, like just tweeting constantly.
Yeah.
Like it can't be. It's generally people that suffer from mental health, right? So it's like the people putting out negative shit online are usually people like recluse in their home.
Yeah, well, I think it's also a case of there being like an incentive to put forth a more extreme viewpoint, right? Because if you're on Twitter, I don't use Twitter, so I'm not that familiar with that platform, but I imagine that it's the kind of the case where if you have just a run-of-the-mill common sense viewpoint, your tweet is not getting much traction.
Yeah.
Right? It's when you parrot this like super woke or even on the other side, the super right-wing viewpoints, those are the ones that are going to start to get retweeted and get you a place in that conversation, right?
I think we talked about this last week, right?
I don't know if we talked about this. Maybe.
Anyways, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think the people that are looking to get into the distraction of Twitter and get involved in these fights and whatever are people like have realized everything is just kind of an addiction of its own. Like you're distracting from doing shit by getting involved in Twitter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
The emotional fight of a Twitter fight. You know, it's something you can engage in for as long as you want to and then stop, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of like, yeah.
But there is it's sort of like you're getting feedback from what you do, right? So if you are a person who doesn't have a solidified niche in the Twitter sphere yet, and you go online and you're making various tweets on different things, if your more extreme viewpoints are the ones that are suddenly getting attention, then you just naturally, based on the psychology of the human mind, are going
rewarded.
you're going to start become more radicalized as a result of that, right?
That's true. I think getting paid to rant would be the greatest profession of all time. But I also think it would be the biggest downfall to most people because I think it's so ego inflating to have your views constant. Like if people are constantly cheering on your rants,
Right.
it's feeding that part of you that you might not want to be feeding.
What do you think the danger is in having that ego boost?
Well, like if you think you're right about everything, then like everyone else is dumb, and then you're going around the world thinking everyone else is dumb, and like you have nothing to learn from anybody.
Yeah, except the kind of people that get into that sort of talking head type role probably already think that.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I kind of think that.
Okay.
I mean, I think that there's certainly people out there that are more skilled at me in various ways, right? But I feel like I don't know. I don't necessarily want to put a number. The majority of people are dumber than me. That's a thought I have frequently. So
yeah.
Am I at risk of a
This is when I wish I was good at quotes because I was just thinking about a daily Stoic quote thing about like if you think the world are fools, then you have nothing to gain. You know, like it's like a something. Yeah.
Well, there's also the quote it's like think of a person with average intelligence, right? And realize that means that 50% of people are dumber than that person.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the circumstance that you're in. I don't know. I guess if I'm really pressed on it, I don't think I'm smarter than everyone. I think that I'm certainly, I have put more effort into refining certain ideas that other people have not put in. So in that sphere, I just have better ideas. Right? That would be my belief.
I love that you always come back to this better ideas thing. Because I kind of resonate to that, but in a different way. Like I'm always like, I have better ideas about how to live life well. I feel like people aren't living life well.
Right.
It's like, I know how I could improve anyone's life. It's like, you should be doing this occasionally. You really like to do this. Take time to do this for yourself every Saturday or, you know, some shit like that. Like people just like don't give themselves permission to have fun in a way that I do.
Yeah, so that's an area where you've developed and refined your beliefs and ideas and skills.
Yeah.
So you have some sort of authority in that area, right?
Yeah. So like, what are your ideas like that? Like that are like me feeling like other people don't know how to like enjoy life as much as I do. Like what's something like that you would that immediately comes to mind?
For me, it's about critical reflection, right? So I believe that I'm very good at looking at ideas without putting too much like bias into it, in the sense of like, if something challenges like my lifestyle or my identity, I'm less likely to try to disagree with it based on that. I'm much more likely to look at ideas and thoughts purely from its truth value and its abilities to stand up against conflicting ideas.
Yeah.
That's to me the area where I think I'm better than a lot of people.
Do you remember the last time you had one of those, like kind of like really challenging ones that were like?
Yeah, I wish I could bring one up because I know I know that it'll come to me eventually in circumstances where I didn't accept something that everyone else believed and it worked out quite well. Like something down the line was revealed that showed that me not accepting that idea was the correct thing, but I can't.
Is this your toilet paper investment?
No. That was pure luck. That was pure luck. I didn't know that was gonna happen. No, I wish I had some examples for you.
Yeah.
There's also, I mean, there is also a type of cognitive bias where you're more likely to remember the times that you're right than the times that you've been wrong.
Right.
So I have to be careful not to make that mistake, right?
Yeah, you learn that the most in gambling.
Right.
You only remember the wins. You never like.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember some loss. Like some losses are epic. Like, but in general, you think you're winning more than you're winning, and losing less than you're losing.
And the same can be true if someone came to me and said, you know, what are your examples of the times that your capacity for critical reasoning has produced really good ideas? It's like, I'm going to remember those, but there could be all of these times where it's produced awful ideas and I'm just ignoring those, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the like, that's like when people talk about how, like comedians, for example, talk about how like they always have their best ideas high and whatever.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I don't think like, I doubt that's true. Do you know what I mean? I just can't imagine their brain is functioning better high than not. They might come up with the premise high. You know what I mean? Like, you know, because it sparks imagination, but there's no way they have like got their wording any way in which it'll be in the final form in that.
That's an interesting one because it's like, how do you tell, right? Because the one thing that I find with smoking weed is that a lot of things are much more like my filter is like reduced, right? So I'm thinking of a circumstance like this was a long time ago, like when I was really young, but I remember smoking weed and just opening a can of Alphagettis and just putting a little garlic powder on it and eating it, and it tasted amazing, right? And then the next day I was like, oh great, a nice little snack. So I tried it again and it was absolutely awful, right? So it's like, that's what happens when you smoke weed, is like you can't be a good judge of things, right?
Yeah.
So like you might think you have the best ideas high, but it could just be that you're judging them much less harshly in that time, right?
For sure. And like, I mean, most drugs give you the idea that your ideas are the best idea at the time, right? Like that's a known thing to anyone that uses drugs. It's like most drugs make you feel confident, like, I'm going to change my life.
True,
I've got that business idea, and I've got the best idea. I'm going to bring maca root to, you know, the fucking North America and deal it, you know.
But there also is this idea that creativity is exactly that, right? It's like, you know, some people are considered creative and some people would say they're not creative, right? And what's the difference between those people? And some people say that everybody just has random ideas popping up, and it's like creative people are the ones that are willing to play with that idea for a bit and develop it, right? Whereas people who are considered uncreative are shooting those ideas down immediately. Yeah. And that's the difference, right?
Yeah. It's like I often think of artwork I would like to make. Do I follow through on any of it? No. Because my first thought is, oh, that seems really hard. I'd have to learn stuff.
Yeah, and so a creative artist is someone that just tries it anyways.
Yeah.
Right? And says, okay,
Yeah.
let's give it a shot, right?
Well, and they don't mind making mistakes. That's another
Right.
thing you learn about artists. Like, it's like they're willing to make mistakes, generally speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
There's not many artists that are like, perfection. Like, because they wouldn't start to, like, they wouldn't do enough work to get good at it, you know?
Yeah, and also the one thing that was a big challenge for me was finishing a piece of art that I didn't like, right? Because like if you produce something and it's amazing the whole way through, it's effortless to complete it. But what if you make like a small mistake that no one else is going to notice, but to you and then you don't want to continue, right?
Hugely.
Yeah. That was always my
Did you ever
challenge.
do art in school?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I did. I did a lot of that sort of stuff. So.
Till like what age?
I mean, I would still consider it a hobby of mine to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Not so much. I haven't in like the last year or so because I've been focusing on other things. But yeah, like I've done lots of drawing and a little bit of painting and stuff like that. So.
Oh, that's cool. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Learn something new every day.
Yeah. I don't necessarily talk about it a lot because I don't know. It's like talking.
Hey
about,
man, can I show you my art?
Yeah.
I that would remind me of that like 20-year-old guy that's trying too hard that like carries his sketchbook around and it's just
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah, right, exactly.
it would be weird for you to be doing that.
Yeah, that's kind of, I've never been that person. It's for me. It's always been just a way to keep my brain doing something that doesn't come naturally.
Right.
I guess. Right.
Yeah.
It's like visual, aesthetic, artistic stuff isn't something that I would say I'm naturally good at. So to try to do it, I feel like, makes me develop a part of me that I otherwise wouldn't, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
I was thinking about, what attitude. Like I was thinking specifically of those dudes that are like really high energy, like, "Hey guys, what's up?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is there any redeeming quality that can be learned from those dudes? Like, what can I learn from this dude's high tempo, in your face, trying to be crazy charming?
I don't think you personally could learn much because I think a lot of the things that you could learn from someone like that, you already do pretty well.
Oh my God, though, but like I don't get that. Like I relate to a dog in a lot of ways, but like those dudes seem really like attention, like they need to have everyone's attention on them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so like if I go into a room, it's like I can have the attention on me. That's fine. I don't love it, right? But like a dude like that is looking for that every time he goes to every bar or every anything.
Yeah, but I guess it's kind of like sports, right?
What do you mean?
Well, you watch people playing.
I fucking love sports. I hate that I can't watch sports anymore. Anyways, continue.
Well, we're gonna have to talk about why you can, but let me just finish this thought. So you're watching sports. You're watching these people play this game, right? That has there's no purpose. Like there's no stakes. Who wins, who loses. Society is going to continue on just as it is. Your life is going to continue on just as it is. Nothing matters about this game.
Yeah.
But you're looking at these people that have devoted their entire lives to being the best at this game to the absolute extreme. What's the value in that?
I'm going to throw your own argument back in your face from a few weeks ago. That's the nihilist argument. It's like, why does anyone do any job? It's all pointless. Like whether or not you work for McDonald's for 40 years,
right?
Did you have an impact or did you just serve a bunch of people fucking hamburgers?
But sports are particularly, in my mind, an abstract thing
You've
care about.
entertained millions of people for years. Like there's not a lot of things that sell tickets, right? Like it's really hard to sell tickets to anything.
Yeah. Yes. So you can say that it's entertaining, but you have to give me more than that. Like you have to tell me the precise.
Would you not say it's a biological need to be entertained in life?
Well,
What's more
what about
valuable
it?
to humans than being entertained? Think about campfire shit. The guy with the guitar is the like, you know.
Yes, I understand. What I'm saying is, what particularly about watching two groups of grown men chase after a ball,
Or women. It's 2021.
right, or women chase after a ball, and what specifically about that is entertaining?
To a large portion of people,
Yeah.
seeing we were taught like the frivolous things to argue about, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can say I fucking hate this guy because he loves the color blue because he loves his team.
Yeah. Okay. That's.
Do you know what I
fair.
mean?
Yeah.
There's not many places in society I get to go around saying someone's a cunt for liking a certain club. Do you know what I mean?
So you're saying it's pure tribalism?
Absolutely. And here's the thing, to me it's healthy tribalism. So like the people that are not into sports, to me, take it to things like politics, which is why you see what's happening now.
Right.
Is like it's less forced on society. Like I feel like sports used to be really forced on society, right? Like if you were a guy that wasn't into sports, it's like, what are you, fucking gay, you know, like
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and like now that we're going away from it, right? I feel like there's less and less people into sports. Yes, sports is always growing, but like it's not growing at the rate that like had it continued what it was in like the 70s, right? And so like
So I think that's a very good point. I didn't think about that. I mean, I've thought about that in the past. I've never considered that a good thing, that sports creates these different sides, and you're for this team and I'm for that team, and you know, well, I never thought of that as a good thing. Maybe it is because of how harmless it is, with the exception of your occasional riot and things like that.
Sure,
that does occur.
Really, who does a riot harm? Everybody.
Small businesses.
Well, sure, but most people are choosing to participate in the riot.
Yeah, well,
as far as physical injury and stuff goes, that's where I thought you were headed with this. I agree with you about the small businesses. Those are the people that lose in a riot.
Yeah.
But yeah, like sports in general, the idea that like it's the one time you can like scream like a maniac at a stranger.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's all these like really like just these things that like you cannot do in society that we're all kind of repressing, right? Because we're all trying to live in a civil whatever.
So I guess the direction I was hoping to head on that was I've sort of heard you touch before on sports in terms of it providing something of a narrative for you. Like like I don't really understand that, but I think that's something you've talked about. Do you
mean narrative for me personally?
Yeah, yeah. Like
because I remember things well about it?
Well, I'm thinking more like this person's career.
Yeah.
Or something, right? Like they.
Oh yeah, like enough, like it's meaningful enough that like I would get them tattooed on me.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
No, I don't know. Maybe I'm.
You're like, whoa! I can't believe you would get a sports star tattooed on you.
That seems a bit extreme to me. Yeah.
That's hilarious. It's almost certainly going to happen. So is that what you mean by like the narrative thing, like connecting really hard to certain players, because it's like. You know, like I did watch for 20 some years now, right? It's something like that. Like 2002 to 2003 was when I started. So, and so there's been like 3 players in that time that like blew my mind that like for sure I would get tattooed on my.
So what was it that like, maybe give me an example of one and what?
Like week in, week out. It's like the most insane shit you've ever seen in your life. Like it's just like I can't believe this dude is like, it's like impossible. Like it's lightning in a bottle shit. Like it's like these dudes are playing against other professionals and they're making them look like elementary kids. Like, or like, it's just like, he shouldn't be able to do that. It's like computer game shit.
Right.
Like it's just like, yeah.
So you're seeing this display of skill that's inspiring to you in a sense, right?
Well, yeah, and you've seen the sport played for your whole life, and so you're seeing it played in a way that you didn't even know was possible. So that's the thing. It's like someone unlocking, because like that's the thing about sports. It's like a game that has limitless possibilities. Like we would just dribble in the backyard trying to create tricks to burn people, right? It's like because there was no YouTube. Like kids must be fucking crazy now, like at burning each other. But like trying, like, just you don't have to be playing soccer to be learning. Do you know what I mean? You can be thinking in your head of all the possible shit. What if I try this? What if I try this? Right? And so it's like, yeah, sports is.
Yeah. So that what you just said there would be what I would say is the value to be found in super extroverted, outgoing people. That was the direction I was trying.
What do you
to go
mean?
in. Well, you're seeing there's this world where someone is top of their game and they're displaying this refined skill in such a level in a world where all this possibility can occur, and you're seeing this person demands this amount of attention from the world. They've developed a skill set that allows them to get that from people, and it's kind of amazing to watch it happen, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that sports is, to see these people who are so great at this one particular skill, and to watch it unfold, right?
Yeah.
That's
well, and it's also like just everybody's unique, right? So it's like, again, it's like you can see everything you need to know about a guy based on how he plays soccer. Do you know what I mean? Like you learn a lot about the person on how they play, and like there's just endless stories. Like I was telling you that I was going to talk to you about Jamie Vardy at one point, because this guy is like, he defies all odds. Like he's 36 years old, I think now. That's probably, I always add 2 years. He's probably like 32. But he's like ancient for a striker, right?
Oh, yeah.
But he relies totally on speed. And so usually with a guy that is over 30, it's like you go downhill. But this guy's like the absolute rat king. Like he's this scrawny little white dude who drinks a Red Bull before the game. Like it's like he smokes, he talks about, like, he's just like not your prototypical like athlete in 2021. Like he's a guy that like doesn't take care of himself, but like he fucking destroys people. Like he's so good. Like he just scores all the time. And like I can't remember why we're talking about Vardy.
Well, I mean, to me that is where sports are at their best, is when you can see, because it's like you're finding the patterns, right? You're seeing this person who has certain characteristics, and they're able to succeed at this very fishbowl like circumstance, and it's like it makes you feel like, can I apply that in my life, in the things that I do? Like, I'm not necessarily having to perform at that level, but if this person can, maybe I can at 36 drink a Red Bull and smoke cigarettes and still compete with people half my age or something, right?
But it's that's why I was sharing it. I forgot, it was back to the narrative was of like Vardy's life. So like the way England works is there's like 4 tiers, and so like you get relegated or promoted up and down this whole league, right? And so he basically took his team from the 4th league to the Premier League, right? And so like most people, what happens in soccer is like if you're the top goal scorer of a shitty team, like a promoted team, the top teams come poach your striker basically.
Right.
Because it's like, oh sweet, striker showed up and this guy scores prem goals, so we should fucking buy him. And they offer these low teams whatever, and they can't afford to keep them because it's so much money. But Vardy has always stayed at this club. He's always had the opportunity to go to all these top clubs, and he's one of these rare people that's like, nah, fuck you guys. Like I like fuck the establishment. I don't, and like this again, it's so to his nature. He loves being an underdog. Like with fans not being there right now, it's criminal. Because this is like the last few years of his career, and he is the taunt king. Like he sets off like riots in the stands and stuff because of his celebrations and stuff. Just like silent, like like going. His favorite thing is to go to away stadiums and score, right, and just silence the fans, running around shushing them and shit like this. It's like, yeah, I like that narrative is what propels me to want to watch sports, because it's like I wish I was that dude, right? Like it's like that. I love playing the heel as well. Like there's no better feeling than upsetting 40,000 people. Like that's a dream of mine.
So I guess that begs the question, why can't you watch sports anymore? Like what
modern sports is just difficult to watch. It's just let's not get into it. It's just all about video replay. It's horseshit.
Oh yeah,
it's terrible. Yeah.
Makes sense.
It's all terrible because sports are supposed to be about the emotion,
right?
And all these pauses and stuff, it just ruins all the. You can't celebrate goals because you think they're going to come back, and it's Anyways, it's a whole thing.
Makes sense.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Man, if they ever create weed though that doesn't interfere with like memory at all, holy shit.
Well,
like, that's one thing that I cannot even pretend is worse. Is like staying on track. It's like, oh fuck.
They have invented weed that it's called CBD.
You know what I mean? Like
no, I don't think you know what I mean. They've actually done studies on the effect. This is actually a good topic because I'm surprised this isn't something that more people know about.
Okay.
Is like, so it's uncontroversial that weed affects your short-term memory, right? That's something that happens to people. Well, specifically THC, right? Causes issues with short-term memory. What they found is that you can take what are called non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, which are basically over-the-counter medications like acetaminophen, ibuprofen, aspirin, those sort of things. If you take one of those while smoking weed, you don't have the problems with short-term memory, right? The problem with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is they're not good to take regularly. Because
terrible for your liver and stomach.
Yeah, your liver and stomach are exactly. But the reason why they work is because they're anti-inflammatory mechanisms, right? CBD has the same anti-inflammatory mechanism, and if you forgive the medical term, but co-administer THC and CBD together at a certain ratio, you don't have the problems with short-term memory.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And like most people have been trying to breed CBD out of strains, right?
Right.
I did smoke. What did I smoke last week? It was like 22% CBD, 8% THC, or something like that.
Yeah.
God, those are disappointing.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that is the stuff that's gonna keep your short-term memory intact. I mean, obviously the problems with short-term memory are temporary. They're not. It's not lasting effects, right? So whatever, but
I like that's the downside with weed. I wish weed had the effect of alcohol. Like, so if I could trade the effects, I would rather be drunk from smoking,
Like, I don't understand. What is it about alcohol that you're missing?
Okay, this is such a high thought. I realized I didn't connect any dots. Okay, so like if I could switch them. So like if you drank a beer and you got high,
Yeah.
and if you smoked you got drunk, that would be my preferred.
I don't understand why on earth you would want that. What
Because
is
feeling drunk is better than feeling high. Like I don't lose track when I'm drunk.
Yeah, but I'm confused as to why you'd want to smoke something.
Because I enjoy smoking. I don't enjoy drinking as much.
I see. So you like the ritual of
Yeah,
weed.
Drinking's too easy. It's just
Right,
I
right.
can just walk over to the fridge and go. Tsk, and it's like, that's why I've never really been like I always figured if alcohol had more of a ritual, I'd be like an alcoholic rather than a guy that's into weed. It's just not that appealing.
Yeah, except alcohol has the most ritual of any drug, right? We go to bars.
Culture
and-
around it. No.
Yeah.
Culture around it, but not like the ritual's not that hard. It's like you can get into like making mojitos and
True,
blah blah
true,
blah, but
yeah.
for the most part, you just walk over to your fridge and pop a cap, and that's it.
Yeah, but the ritual is the drinking part. Like what I have the hardest time. I don't like the effect of being drunk at all, but what I really like is the sitting there with friends, just having something to drink, right? And the thing is, it's like there aren't really suitable replacement beverages because I would just drink them too fast, right? Like a beer just has enough of a bite to it that I have to drink it relatively slowly, and I can just kind of chill with friends, right? That's
Right.
the ritual.
Right.
Whereas if you just smoked a alcohol joint, that would completely
Oh, that'd be the best.
get rid of it.
Just immediately getting fucked up drunk. I would love that so much. And you would also have no hangover the next day. So you'd immediately be drunk.
So
You'd be the good drunk. It'd be the perfect drunk. It'd be like the 3-beer buzz kind of drunk.
I feel like you're describing like ketamine or something like that, where it has
Is that
this.
what ketamine would do?
I wouldn't say it's. I don't know. For me, it feels a lot like being drunk.
We really
Ketamine.
do end up talking about drugs on this
Yeah,
podcast
well-
a lot. I mean, we really did nail the topic.
The time. Yeah, I think a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this. I really don't like ketamine, but I found it to have a similar effect to feeling drunk to me.
Why did you not like it?
Because I don't like that effect. Like I don't like being drunk either. I find it's a very numbing, dulling type of effect where I'm like,
But is that ketamine I've only heard of ketamine from them doing like clinical trials in India for like major depression and stuff like that.
right.
And so like people talk about it like feeling womb like and stuff. So I'm surprised like you didn't
No, I didn't feel that at all. It
felt more drunk.
Yeah, like it felt like just a sloppy kind of drunk kind of feeling. I'm sure people would disagree with me on this, but I have heard people talk about there's a synthetic drug that's similar to ketamine called MXE, which I think is nearly impossible to get nowadays because it's really hard to make. But for a while there, it was accessible, and I remember having conversations with people who sort of asked the question, could any drug replace alcohol in a social setting? And it was people considered MXE to be that candidate drug to say, like, if we could just legalize all drugs, would any one of the modern substances that are used recreationally, could any of them take the place of alcohol? And MXE, I guess I've never tried it, but has that possibility.
But that's interesting because like I would replace the smoking to get drunk versus the drinking, but no, I wouldn't take a pill versus not drinking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So with ketamine and MXE, it's more of a intranasally snorting type
Oh,
drug.
okay.
So I don't know how you feel about those, but
I don't have any thoughts. I honestly don't know anything about that. Are those considered poppers?
Mm-mm.
I don't know anything
No, it's
about
like
poppers,
cocaine,
so-
right? You just get a straw and you snort it.
I don't
right?
know anything about most drugs, surprisingly.
Yeah.
I just know all about hippie drugs.
But you know about cocaine, right? You understand.
I mean, to a degree. I definitely wouldn't say I'm a pro at it.
I mean, if you really want, you can, with something like MXE or ketamine, you can, I don't remember the term for it, but I think you can inject it sort of up the the anal cavity to get a really good buzz off of it. I've heard.
I was about to start describing your hand motion. Jason seems to be indicating. Yeah.
Yeah, I went down that line not realizing what I'd have to describe, but
yeah, no, I'm not really a huge like jam drugs up my ass kind of guy.
Yeah, so
It's not a huge. That wouldn't be a like. This is gonna make it more pleasurable.
but you wouldn't have to drink. I don't know. I mean, I think there's two things about alcohol that I like. One is the ritual of having something just to interact with in a social setting, right? Like you just get to, you don't always have to be talking. You could just be nursing a beer or, yeah, that I really like. And the other thing I like about alcohol is the way that it comes on slowly, right?
Alcohol?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, like, so
not if you're an anxious drinker.
True, but the thing is, it's like you can moderate the effect by how much you're drinking, right?
But how do you, when you go drinking, when I'm out in public, I have such social anxiety that I shouldn't be there. I'm constantly drinking. Like it's like I'm constantly picking up my glass.
Yeah, true.
Even though I'm trying to in my head say, slow down, you're going to get drunk. It's like, you got to be doing something. You can't just be sitting here. You're not allowed to just sit here.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, yeah, this whole.
I get that. I've had that in circumstances where I was just really uncomfortable in a social setting where I was just pounding the drinks back. But in most cases, you can, or rather I can just control the buzz, right? Like, if I'm drinking at this particular rate, I'm going to feel it at this level and then no more. Or I
still haven't good at that. Just riding that.
Yeah.
Perfect wave for a while, right? Like.
Yeah, so I get maybe it's not for everyone, but it is possible to do that. I find other drugs you can. Like you can't do that with marijuana. It's like you're either blasted or you're not, right?
Well, I don't know. Edibles are middle of the road.
I find with edibles, it's like I find it's just like you eat an edible and it's just like nothing, and you're like, oh shit, I'm really high. At one point, you just realize that you're completely stoned. That's how edibles work for me.
Yeah, it is just a moment of like, oh, I'm more fucked up than I thought.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what happens? Like, I'm just kind of like, everything feels like they're kind of boring to me. And I'm kind of like, I can't believe this isn't doing anything to me. It's like 2.5 hours in.
Right.
But then I like go to do something that like takes motor skills and you're like, oh, okay. Like I am fucked up. But like,
right.
that's what I mean by like, if you don't have the punch you in the face part.
Yeah, I don't like
drugs?
I don't like a drug that sneaks up on you like that, like an edible does. That's like the worst kind, where you're just like, you eat it. There's a little bit of anxiety when you first eat it because you're not sure how it's going to affect you. And then you kind of like 2 hours go by and you're like, okay, nothing's happening, whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're blasted high and you're like, oh, fuck. Right?
Do you remember the first few times you did your like eat or drink and wait to see kind of drugs? Like how freaked out you were about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Like was there any drug time that like was more anxiety inducing than that? Were you afraid to smoke weed the first time? Were you afraid to?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. Like, there's a lot of drugs, like say like LSD or like the psychedelics in particular, that there's always that waiting period, and I find it very anxious, but in a weird way, it's also kind of fun, because it's like there's this anticipation. You're like, what's gonna happen?
Mm-hmm.
Especially, I found that a lot with like doing psychedelics with other people, right? It's like you take the drug, and you're all kind of sitting around, and there's this heightened tension because you're all kind of waiting, and you're all like paying like extra close attention to what's happening in your body. You're like, oh, what was that sensation? Was that something that's normal, or was that something that is happening as the result of this substance I just took, right?
I've only tried once. So like, it was only one time my friend came home, or my roommate at the time. And he's just like, it's like some random summer after. It's the classic, like, you're doing nothing 20s.
Yeah.
Guy comes home with mushrooms from the local bar and is like, hey, you guys ever done mushrooms? Me and my friend were like, no. He's like, you game? And we're like, sure. We're not doing anything. So we just sat, ate mushrooms, and then we're like doing the waiting around for whatever.
Yeah.
And they just never kicked in for me. And
yeah, right.
I don't know. Like, I now know it's probably because I need a shitload of whatever, and I probably just didn't eat enough, like, at all. It was like, truly a microdose.
Yeah, that sucks. I remember a circumstance where I was really young, like I was still like 18 or 19. Actually, no, I was actually still in high school, and we went to this like some kind of bar that becomes like an after bar that doesn't serve alcohol, where people, or like a after hours club, I guess they called them.
Okay.
So once you can no longer serve alcohol after 2:00, like last call, some bars become these after hours clubs, and you can just go and they play music and no alcohol is served. Obviously, in those circumstances, a lot of drugs are being done, right? So I went to one of those, and we bought some MDMA from someone there, right? And pretty sketchy person, right? So we bought this with this MDMA, and most of what we bought wasn't really MDMA, except for the one that I took, right? So everybody else that I was with, they didn't get anything off of this, and I was just sitting there like completely high off my balls.
Do you think this has to do with your low tolerance thing? Do you think it was just like MDMA cut down to such a level that it still affected you because, like, you know, weed tolerance?
No, that does actually happen to me a lot in this particular circumstance, because we confronted the guy that we bought it from, and he said, "Oh yeah, I told you guys that only one pill was MDMA and the rest were this other chemical." I don't remember what he said it was, but it clearly wasn't anything.
Right.
So in that particular case, it was only the pill that I took, but I think my friends were kind of pissed off about it, because they kept like saying things to me like, oh, you know, with MDMA, be careful of how much water you drink, and
right.
and they were just like piling on the downsides while I was high, and it was really,
it's the worst.
Yeah, really
it's
uncomfortable.
Like, this isn't the time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just let me enjoy this, and
yeah.
If I pass out or something, then be there for me. But yeah,
one of my times when I was like really fucked up, either on acid or mushrooms, someone was like, "You're gonna jump out the window." I was like, "Why
right.
would you put that in my head on the way up?" Like, you know, it's like, you know, because you'll start to believe insane shit.
Yeah, like the total like set and setting thing applies here, right?
It's like at a certain point, it's like, you don't want to be hearing that at all. You know, like your rational, not high mind is like, okay, most of those are fabricated, blah blah blah. It was like made up scare straight tactics. Most people are fine. No one reports their drug use, so it's like we don't know that like 99% of trips are totally fine. You know, yeah.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I've been in a circumstance where doing LSD with friends, And we had someone who he just couldn't handle LSD. It was like his brain wasn't made for it or something. So he was completely sober, and we were all doing LSD. And like halfway through the trip, he just all of a sudden said, "Hey, everyone, I want you all to know everything's going to be okay," right? He just said that randomly, and it was like so perfect for me at that moment. I was like, "Oh, that is exactly what I needed to hear at this."
That is not how I would have reacted to that. I'd be like, "Where's his weapon? And is he going to
really?
kill us right now?"
No, I mean, he
Everything's going to be okay,
friend.
guys. Everything's going to be okay. As he slowly plunges a knife into my neck.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I mean, he was a trusted friend, so I wasn't thinking that. Maybe I should have been. I don't know.
I don't know. I like for me, there's like if people are on drugs, there's a different context to sayings. You know, like it's like I don't trust people when they're on drugs because
so
altered.
like if you're in a circumstance where you have a trip sitter, like let's say you're doing a psychedelic and you have someone there who's just there to see you through the experience, how do you want them to act?
I've considered it a lot doing that. I never thought I needed it, but the last time I've done anything was the 8.5 grams time, and so I'm a little terrified now about
right.
doing it alone again. So that's not true. I shouldn't. Drugs really don't intimidate me that much. It's more like I'd prefer not to do 8.5 grams again unless I'm doing a guided meditation.
Yeah.
Because it got pretty insane at points. And so, like, I can't remember what the point of this was.
I just was curious, like, what do you want to see if you are in a circumstance where someone's guiding you through a trip? Like, what do you want them to provide for you? Like, what are the safety nets, or things like that they're
just physical safety, I think. Like, just that's the only thing that my mind ever panics about is physical safety. Just that something will happen and I won't be able to respond to it.
Yeah, like you've told me before that you wanted someone who could physically restrain you if you...
Yeah, like I wouldn't want someone that's like 4'9" trip sitting me.
Yeah. That's
like I'm going to shrug you off.
But what is I guess for me, like, I don't feel like I'm not in any danger of acting out in a physical way that I need someone to restrain me, right?
Well, that's the thing 8.5 grams of mushrooms will tell you. It taught me that my body starts to spasm and does get physically out of control. Like I was genuinely worried a lot about just like spasming and elbowing my ex-girlfriend in the face who I had to call over.
Yeah.
Like to help me out. It was ludicrous. Like I was like, oh, I have totally done the classic thing of underestimating mushrooms because my first time on 4.5 went so well, right? And I was so in control. And so, yeah, 8.5 taught me that your body can be, or your mind can be affected so much that it starts to physically.
Yeah, I've never done 8.5, so that's crazy to me.
Like I was just like whipping knees and elbows, like just it was crazy. I was like, this is nothing about this is connected to what I'm trying to actually do.
So you don't feel like you could have been talked down from that kind of thing, like?
Well, like I remember at 8.5 thinking how laughable it is that people, like all those stories about people committing suicide and whatever on too high a dose of mushrooms or something like that. It's like I was fucking paralytic in a bed, like just like the idea I could even get vertical
right
to get out of my room to like ludicrous. Like it's like my I couldn't stand. My legs would just be jelly and fall apart. Like it.
Yeah, that's I've never heard of these mushroom-induced suicide stories, but
Well, like like mushroom and acid, like people talked about jumping out windows and stuff all the time. You don't remember those? Wasn't it Degrassi or something like that?
Yeah, but were they telling the truth, or was that
No. That's what
overblown?
I'm saying. It's like the whole abduction thing in the '90s. Like it's just
Yeah.
like a small stat that they hyped into this. Like,
Right.
keep your kids away from these hard hallucinogenic drugs. You'll get super fucked up. And
Yeah, the one that I think the closest I came to something like that was salvia. I don't know if you ever tried that.
no, it always scared me.
It was a frightening experience. Like I took it. I was in bed. They're like, just keep your blinds closed, all of that stuff. So I
Wait, did they say keep your blinds closed because of that video online?
don't know.
Do you know
what
the one I'm
video.
talking about? Where there's like a kid in a trailer that smokes salvia, and then he ends up jumping out his blinds like through his window.
Right. That is the kind of circumstance you could find yourself. 'Cause
Okay, sorry, I interrupted you.
What,
You're saying
no, that was actually a very good thing to bring up, because that is exactly the kind of thing that you would want someone there to physically restrain you from doing.
right.
Right? Like the circumstance I had was I was in my room, blinds were closed, but there was a tear in the, there were curtains, not blinds. There was a tear in the curtains. And so I took salvia, and the light coming in from the tear started to look like it was kind of flowing in, and it started to morph into like the face of a demon, right? And I got freaked out, and I bolted out of the room, and I was in a 2-story apartment at the time, and I was like trying to run down the stairs, and it was nearly impossible for me to do. I very nearly just completely tumbled my ass all the way down the stairs. Definitely that drug, you want to have someone there to restrain you.
There's some insane videos of people smoking salvia and jumping out like second floors, or
Right.
like, yeah, you at least want your friend to like grab your ankle,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be like, consider not doing it. What?
Especially since it's over so quickly. Like they don't
Right.
even have to really restrain you for very long.
Yeah, it's like 5 minutes, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember it's like, how you were like, oh, I shouldn't tell you the downsides of kratom before
Right.
you try it. Someone told me the downsides of they were like, oh, it really burns your throat to smoke.
It does. Yeah.
And so I'm like, fuck, I'm out. No, hate that. I hate that feeling more than most.
Yeah, except it's like they have extracts, right? So you can get these like 300x salvia extracts that are just like a very super concentrated version.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only time I tried salvia many times, and I could never really get an effect from it because I couldn't take in enough of the smoke. It was just too much, right, for me to handle,
Yeah.
right? And then I got this 300x extract, and that's the only time I ever had an effect from it, because you only had to inhale such a small amount
Right.
to get it to work, right?
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I still wanted to explore drugs on some level. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I kind of hate how I view addiction and drugs, like use now in general. Like Gabor Mate's book really fucked me up.
The what?
Gabor Mate's book.
Yeah, I don't know.
In the
that.
Realm of Hungry Ghosts.
Yeah, you've mentioned that before. to me.
Yeah. He basically just explains like childhood trauma is the reason everybody does drugs.
Yeah, probably.
It's like if you could guarantee that the human existence had no trauma, which is impossible to do, in raising your kids, then you might be able to escape addiction. But drug use isn't necessarily about addiction, though.
Yeah, and I think the problem for me, the biggest problem with like 90s drug propaganda, I think that really pissed me off the most, was that the idea that all drugs are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're not. There's very different. Each, like something like cocaine, something like crystal meth, something like heroin, those are completely different drugs from LSD and mushrooms and DMT and things like
Yeah.
that, right? They're different in how they affect you. they're different in how likely you are to get addicted to them, and the reasons that you do them are completely different, right?
How do you think people should talk to kids about drugs now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think,
Like, do you want your cool uncle to like do you want kids eventually?
I don't know, but yeah, no, I've actually thought about that subject, about how if I had kids, how would I
Yeah.
talk to them about it? And literally what I just said, I would make sure that they understand the distinction between what I would consider dangerous and unhealthy drugs, and ones that could be used in a healthy way to sort of explore your inner world or gain a better perspective on things like psychedelics, right?
Are you like, would you, okay, so say you happen to overhear your daughter say she was out at a park yesterday running around high on acid with her friends.
Well, how old are we talking?
She's 15.
Yeah, I think I would approach it in the sense of like, you have to be careful with these drugs, right? You can't just take
Well,
it.
that's the thing. Nothing happened. You're hearing about this the day after.
Yeah.
So it's like, are you disciplining that? Are you having a talk about that? Or are you letting it go? Because it's just kind of like, I don't know.
No,
young people doing shit.
I'm having at the very least to talk about it, because yes, the drug itself, it's like, who said this on that? What was that show? The Netflix show, where there was like an animated podcast. I don't remember the name of it.
Sorry, I don't
it's
recall.
escaping me. But on that show, the first episode, they said it really well, and they said, "No drug is bad; it's the circumstance." Right? It's like in certain circumstances, Xanax is exactly what you need.
Right.
In other circumstances, LSD is exactly what you need.
Right.
That's maybe the approach you should take with children. It's like, when you're on a playground running around, LSD that's not the right circumstance for that chemical, right?
Unless it is.
Well, I would argue that it isn't.
What if you have a mind-blowing experience?
I mean, that's possible.
Are you saying a kid, what was the scenario?
Running around a playground high on acid.
Yeah, with kids your own age?
Yeah.
Yeah, who gives a shit?
I just think that it might be dangerous, right? Because I mean, for one, like we were saying before, particularly when you're younger, people aren't necessarily taking into account your altered state when they tell you things, right? They might say something to you that really fucks with you just because they're inconsiderate about what is going through your head at that point, right?
I guess so. I think it all depends on how drugs affect you, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, because like if someone says something to me on acid, that doesn't affect my trip.
Really?
No, like it's a very insular process.
Huh. Because I find that I'm so much more receptive to what people are saying to me if I'm on a psychedelic. Like, that's the time when you can actually get into my subconscious if you want to, and say something that's going to fuck with me for like the next 2 months or something, right?
Whereas for me, it's like it breaks down an anxiety wall where I would normally not say anything because I don't want the conflict. If I'm high on something or fucked up on something, I'm more likely to speak what I actually am thinking.
Yeah, that's true. I've been in that circumstance as well, where it's like I'm better able to express sort of my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But other times I've been just completely a empty slate, ready to take in what other people are gonna say at that particular moment, right? That's the thing. It's like, that's why the playground running around is not a good place to do acid, because it's so unpredictable what's going to happen.
See, and we
right?
have such different views, because I'm kind of like, Did you have fun? Like, this is why I know I shouldn't be a parent. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I would be that like I wouldn't ever want to be the parent that's like the cool, like trying to be the cool parent that hangs out with my kid. But at the same time, it's like that's just something I don't like. I know the way I would parent is very like, just don't make it a problem for me or yourself. Like that's how you have to live life, right? Like as an adult, it's like you can do drugs, just don't make it a problem for other people. Like don't do needles in your backyard like during the day while your neighbor's kids are out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm totally different perspective on it from you. I would think of it more like learning to drive, right? Like you want to be educated on something like psychedelics before you do it, right?
Yeah, but them doing it, they got an education. So do you know what I mean? Like, so in the way that like people argue there's bad trips versus good trips, right? So like if the first time my hypothetical daughter gets way too fucked up on acid, like it's like that's a learning experience.
Well, what if you learn that your daughter took your car for a joyride the day before? It all worked out. Nobody got hurt and there was no accident. Would you at that point say, well, did you have fun?
Well, no, because that's different. That's endangering the lives of others.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Like you're talking about weaponizing yourself, whereas if you're just taking acid and running around in a park, it's like you're only going to smash your own face on the playground.
Yeah.
You know.
But I still look at it and it's like you're right that it's not the same because when you're behind the wheel, you're a danger to other people. But I would still want I'd still want my kids to approach it with a more measured and educated perspective.
But it's the same thing of like, I would like them to go to a house party without my knowledge. Like, it's that whole thing of like, I would want them to do shit that I would have wanted to do, but just don't make me aware of it. Like again, like common sense, like parenting shit.
Yeah.
Just like you live your life. Like I like that whole like you like way of parenting that's like you live your life here and you just constantly show your kids the consequences. So it's like, you know, or like the pros and cons of their decisions. It's like you can stay out late tonight, but like if your grades start to slip, like shit like that, you know.
Yeah.
And you won't get into this school and maybe that you want to do this job and, you know.
I think that maybe this comes down to our own parents and how they raised us, and maybe we just maybe we want to go in the opposite route of, because like I had parents that were like what you just described.
Oh, I see.
Right? They were the ones that are like, figure it out for yourself, right? Just go be a kid, make mistakes, you will learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I hated it. I was like, why can't you share some of your wisdom and experience with me so I don't have to make these mistakes, right?
Yeah.
That's how I felt when I became an adult. It's like I felt like my parents were too hands off. I
don't think ours are dissimilar in that way. I always felt like, who are these like magic dads on TV that are like passing down information? Like I never got any of this shit from either of my parents. Like neither of them are like, this skill's been in my family for 7 generations. It's just like, I don't know. You're 13. Like, are you out of my house yet? Like, like, I only really wanted this for maybe a couple of years, and now it's like, I scoot. Like, this is that thing of like, I feel like now people are more aware of who wants to be a parent and not.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the parents that had like our generation are just kind of like, they readily admit like, I probably wouldn't today have kids given.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think our parents' generation, there was much more of a cultural expectation.
Yeah.
That you do that, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of people who probably wouldn't have otherwise had children, and they were these kind of absentee parents as a result, right?
I bet it still happens, but I bet it happens at less of a rate because it's way more acceptable to not be married or whatever now, right? Like it's not. I don't think like in-laws are constantly asking people that have been together like 7 years, like, when are you getting engaged? I think it's kind of you know the deal. It's like one of these two doesn't like marriage, move on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember having friends in like just after high school, and there were some that having children was like that was what they wanted, right? And they jumped into it super quickly, and I don't know where they are now, but presumably they're perfectly happy and have well-adjusted children.
Yeah.
But
they'll definitely be the people that are like, they'll say, I love my children, but
yeah,
that's the other thing you learn. Grass is always great. Like, if you had, I was thinking about that today. If my life had played out the way, like I fantasize my life had played out, right?
yeah,
Would I be thinking about all these other ways that it didn't work out?
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think absolutely.
for sure. Yeah,
So that's why I think it's a weird thing to dwell. Like when I catch myself dwelling on stuff now, I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter how good your life gets. You're always going to complain about things. Like that's
true. But I think the problem is that if you fantasize about something, you're fantasizing about all the good. You're not thinking about all the bad, right?
Mhm.
Like if a child is thinking, oh, I want to be a famous singer one day, they're thinking about the fans and the money and the glamour. They're not thinking about the hours of auditions and rejection and all those things, right?
Yeah.
And that's why the grass is always greener, is because you don't think about the
Right.
bad. So
I always think about what the first thing I would do if, like, so I always, my big solve, like most people's big solve, is if I had a lot of money, right? And so it's like the first thing I do is make sure I never have to cook ever again.
yeah.
I immediately hand that over to someone else.
It would be folding clothes for me.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I hate folding clothes. Oh man.
That feels like the thing that, like, do you feel like every time you have to do it, you're like, fuck, not this again. Like this is
Yeah.
every second day or every.
I actually go through a full-on existential crisis every time I fold clothes.
Okay, let's go back to your childhood. So what's your what's your earliest memory of folding clothes that you hated?
Well, so we, this is opening up a wound. I remember we had a laundry room, right? And we would just literally just throw the clothes on the floor in the laundry room. And then when you needed clean clothes, you would just dig through the pile and grab your clean clothes. And it was like, in my childhood mind, it's like knee deep clothes. That's what I'm thinking and I remember one day, my mom just got really upset and said, we're not doing this anymore. Go in and you're going to find all your clothes, fold them and put them in your room. And me and my sister, with our eyes crying, had to go in and fold this huge pile of clothes. That's my earliest memory. Quite possibly the reason why I hate folding clothes. I don't know.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's like you guys were brought up doing it one way.
Yeah.
And then it drastically shifted, and it's like, but this way is way harder.
Right.
It's way less fun, for one, than digging around a mountain of clothes. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it. I really would like I put a lot of thought into like what if it would be possible to have like a robot that could fold clothes, because it seems like a really hard thing to design a robot to do.
No, it seems really possible. Like, you know those like, so they have these like pieces of plastic that are shirt folders. Have you seen those?
No, I have not seen those.
So it's like these like assisting things. So like you put your shirt flat down on it and then you go flop, flop, and it like folds your shirt together.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Perfectly,
right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like it would be that hard for an engineer to automate that.
Yeah, but when clothes come out of like a washer dryer, they're in this complete chaotic place, right? They're not like we're talking when you talk about
you
a
would
robot.
still have to be part of the process.
Exactly, you got to input it in a certain way.
You're thinking more like 1930s like invention shit, where it's like the comical like string and like da-da, 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 like to your room, and then it like
Oh yeah. Like we're talking like Rosie from the Jetsons type thing where
It folds it into your whole closet and it's just there for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want that so bad.
I think that's why people do, like, rich people do the only wear a pair of socks once.
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
Yeah.
that's insane to me, right?
Right.
Like, I can't imagine wasting that many socks. Like, to me, just the waste would build up on my guilt
Oh,
conscience.
totally. Yeah, that is such a waste. I don't know. I think maybe only wearing a pair of socks once is more because of how great it feels, like a new pair of socks. Like it definitely is a wonderful feeling to put on like a fresh pair, never worn socks.
They're also really hard to keep looking good.
True. Yeah.
Like, nobody has figured out the sock game in the sense of, like, you can't get a black pair of socks that's not going to have little fucking lint
True.
things, right?
Yeah.
And you're also not going to get a pair of dress socks that doesn't easily start fading, like,
Mhm.
at different spots, right?
Yeah.
Man.
And then you just think about all the holes. Like obviously when a sock gets a hole, you throw it out, but there's a whole period of time where that hole is developing and it's just a slightly thinner area of fabric
Mhm.
around your heel, right? And it's just like, hate that.
That's the other thing. Like, it's funny that things got so cheap that we stopped having to repair,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, how many average people know how to sew now?
Yeah, not very many.
Like, I think most people, when you get a hole in a shirt, it's just like, fuck, bye,
Yeah,
Goodwill, or just straight in the garbage, right?
totally. That's how I am. I don't even understand how you could repair a hole in a shirt. Like, there's gonna be a stitch there, right?
Yeah, I'm always like, doesn't it pull the fabric together?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And people are like, nah, it just works. It's like, how?
I don't see how it could. I still disagree with that.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could repurpose the fabric for something else, like washcloths, or you could use it to patch something.
Yeah.
But I don't see me stitching up a hole in a shirt like a t-shirt and then wearing it more.
Yeah. But like, you would think that like say shirts start costing $400.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people will be like, okay, the new cool style is to have patches on your shirt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Like,
totally.
Like, some kind of new thing would develop, because like people would not be as readily chucking shit out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that was how things were. I wish we built stuff with easily repairing it and keeping it in use for a long time, right? Like that would, like, you know, the whole smartphones and all of that just piss me off so much when your battery dies and it's like you can't even just pop it open and replace the battery.
Oh, okay. Tell me if this is one. I think this is one. I think when they get you to download updates, it's merely a way to fill up your phone eventually with so much data you have to get a new phone.
Right, yeah. That's
Like,
one.
Every Android phone I've used, after like 3 years, it's just like the system updates is as large as the thing now.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, boy, that's awfully convenient. I have to buy a new thing every 3 years. I feel like that's totally designed, and those updates don't actually, like, if someone goes into the code, they'd be like, this is just filled up space. Like, it's
Totally.
just lines of a guy typing F or something.
Well, and further evidence to that theory is that smartphones, you get these tiers where the phones are identical except for the storage. It's like the entry level phone will have like 32 gigabytes, which is a bullshit amount of storage for a phone to have in 2021. And then the high level is the 250 gigabytes, which costs way more, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I can go to Staples and get a thumb drive or an SD card that has that same amount. It's not costing me an extra $200. You're absolutely ripping us
It's
off.
just the fact
right?
you jammed it in a phone.
Yeah, and then they won't include an SD card reader, so you're stuck with the storage level that you have, and then they do what you just said, and
designed, what's that called? Designed
Planned obsolescence, right?
planned obsolescence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I had a couple things this week I wanted to talk to you about.
cool.
You still up for it?
Yeah. I've been trying to keep notes of stuff to talk, and I just looked at mine and it said sports. So we already did that one. So
Sports.
that's all I wrote down.
Because we mentioned it last week or something?
Yeah, I think I wanted to know more about your perspective on
I think I really wanted to tell you about Vardy, the Rat King.
it. Yeah.
Because he's just a hilarious. I like when guys that should not be athletes, just like, because like I've always been that person that like if people say like, because I went to a summer camp once, like a Christian summer camp where it's all about climbing, and everybody there is just constantly being like, oh, it's so hardcore to go hiking and climbing like all the time. I'm like, hiking is not fucking hardcore.
Right.
It's just walking vertically.
I know.
And you can do it as slow as you want. There's no time limit. You can take 4 days. No one judges you on that. Like, just anyway, it's just, I'm like, I could do it in my soccer shoes. Like, I'm like, shut the fuck. It's not this hardcore thing. Right?
I totally agree with that.
Oh my God.
I have so many circumstances where I've gone hiking with people that feel like they're, running a marathon or something like that. And it's like, we're just walking.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're walking up, and that makes it a little bit harder, but whatever. Right?
Why was I bringing that up though? Why were we talking about that?
You said that you like when people who shouldn't be athletes are.
Oh
athletes,
yeah,
right?
for that reason, like because I like people doing things that other people are like, oh, this is so hard, really easily.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I like when people come into sports and they make a mockery of it. Like Bo Jackson, for example, right? He's just like, well, I can do either of these sports, and people are like, no, you can't. He's like, oh, I for sure can.
Right.
Like, do you know anything about him?
No, I knew that. Yeah, he played. Was it baseball and football?
Football,
Yeah.
and like just comically destroyed at both. Like, it was just like, oh, he's ludicrous. Like, and like people like that, or people like there's this guy named Marshawn Lynch who like famously just like munches on Skittles all the time when he was being a running back, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
he's known as like this giant kid, right? And it's just like people like that. It's hard for these established like white guys in the booth to be like, this is such a disciplined sport. It takes all these, these highly trained. It's like, well, this guy's eating fucking Skittles and like popping 7-Up. Like, yes, it's a highly tuned talent, whatever ability, but you don't have to be like, it's like,
But the thing is,
still humans can still do this. You know what I mean?
But isn't those examples showing you that it's not such a highly skilled thing, right? Like, there's a lot of genetic advantages that people get, right?
Mhm.
But once you got the physicality down, is there that much skill in?
Well, that's my point, is like just them highly focusing on like, this kind of athlete would never put that kind of garbage in his body, and all that.
Yeah.
Like, and like these kind of dudes just buck that narrative. It's like, there's like a dude eating like a hot dog on the side. Like, there's a famous clip of a guy just like jamming a hot dog down his mouth, which is like totally against like NFL policy, right? To be like eating at halftime. But it's just like, why are we so hyper focused on what people do to perform their thing? Like, this is always a thing that I found insane in anything, is like, if this guy wants to use drugs, let him use drugs. Like,
You're saying using performance enhancing drugs in sports?
I mean, it's a tricky issue, right? No, I don't mean stuff that's gonna fuck you up. I mean stuff like, if a guy wants to eat a hot dog at halftime, let him eat a hot dog at halftime.
Yeah, like there was that snowboarder.
Or if they want to smoke weed because it
Yeah.
makes their body feel better during the week. Like
Right.
that's who I want to talk to you about. Anyway, sorry, go ahead. I'll come
Yeah,
back
there
to
was
it.
that snowboarder from BC.
Ross Robiati.
Yeah, and I was like, why the fuck did anyone care if he smoked weed, right? It's not a performance enhancing drug, right? I obviously like situations where somebody's doing steroids or
Mhm.
blood doping or whatever. Yeah, that's a problem, right? But
Things like weed are only going to detract.
yeah, exactly.
No one's like, man, I got it. It just makes like, I mean, Joe Rogan claims that like jujitsu slows down and it makes you better at it. But like for most sports, it's pretty. I don't think it's enhancing.
No,
to
I
have delayed
agree,
reaction time. There's
Yeah.
not many sports that reward delayed reaction time.
Right.
But on this note, that's another athlete I wanted to talk to you about. Do you know who Josh Gordon is?
No.
This is the kind of story that's like going to piss off future like people in 2040. So like he's this guy that came into the NFL and just fucking destroyed. Like as a 21-year-old, like he just caught everything, was impossible to cover. You knew every play it was going to this guy, unstoppable, but the dude could not stop smoking weed. So he got busted for smoking weed because the NFL's policy is so low. Like it's like nanogram amounts. Like it's like if you're fucking smoking CBD, I'm sure it shows up as like something. And so like anyways, he had 2 or 3 of these violations. And so on his second violation, they banned him for a whole year during one of the times I owned him in fantasy. This is how I know so much about him and why I'm so pissed about this guy. Because, like, he basically... So the dude loves weed. But when he comes to work, he is the best at his job and fucks people up. So what's the problem here?
Right.
Like, weed is not... And so, like, in 20 years, people are going to look back and like, oh, remember when we banned Josh Gordon from the league? Because he finally got banned from the league because it was the third strike kind of thing. And it's just like, so you banned a guy that set records that have been there for hundreds of years because he smoked weed.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's like saying that like if a guy drinks a beer now, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, or even worse, it's like someone like Alan Turing, who was this like mastermind codebreaker mathematician guy for the UK. I can't remember when, World War I or II, and he was gay, and they kicked him out because he was gay, right? Ostracized him. And nowadays we're like, holy shit, that was a fucking bullshit move on the part of the UK government, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that's going to be looked on like that, right?
yeah, well, it is amazing how many things end up being that way. Like these short-sighted, like, I think maybe it was the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't really listen to it anymore, as I said, but like he was talking about how basically Japanese engineers were forced after the war, like because of the peace treaty signed with Japan or whatever, like they were basically like, you're not allowed to build rockets and nukes and blah, blah, blah. And so all those rocket engineers and shit started designing cars, which is why they started kicking the shit out of the US and whatever, because like all those super brain people are now working in the auto industry rather than designing military weapons, right? Like,
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story.
I like the idea of like, yeah, if you repurposed where people are working currently, like what are we missing out on? Like what fields would be actually really good at other fields? Like, are firefighters amazing teachers? Should we figure that out?
Right. Well, I just want there to be, I don't want to lose any human potential, right? Like I want our society to make sure that everyone who has the innate talent gets the kind of nurturing and development that they need to be awesome at whatever that is that they can be awesome at, right? Mm-hmm. Like it pisses me off to hear that sort of stuff where someone, because of just where they were born or the kind of their skin color or orientation, or because they swear too much or whatever, causes them to lose out on this, and we as society lose out on the benefit as well. That really bothers me. Right?
I feel like the internet's probably helped a lot of that, right? Like, because like Gary in Akron, Ohio, now can actually have someone look over his screenplays in theory. You know what I mean? Like, and there's a way to get noticed. You could say you're still submitting random stuff, whatever, but it's like that's one way to go about it. But if you get a big enough attention of anything online,
Yeah.
people start to pay attention, right?
Yeah, we're the thing that I think a lot of people don't consider is like the kind of advancement, scientific advancement, and that sort of thing that will be possible once the developing world becomes on par with the developed world, right? Like in terms of schooling and infrastructure and that sort of thing, right? Like there's billions of people living on this planet that are growing up in these subsistence agricultural societies that could, possibly make great contributions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to start to happen in the next decades and stuff.
Except that the system is set up to keep those countries down.
Yeah, well, that's what we should definitely work on if that's the case, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we could have cured cancer by now for all we know if we had all the brilliant minds on this planet working on something. It doesn't have to all be the same thing, but we're just missing out, right? A lot.
I was just, when you were saying the developed and developing world, in one of the books I was reading recently, he was like, those are outdated terms. We don't say
what's
developing, or first world, third world.
What's the new term?
I don't know. I quit the book. I fucking hated the book, so I don't remember. But
yeah, like I knew that third world and first world were no longer valid terms, but what is it now?
Well, because what is develop? I think his argument was like developed and developing. What is what is that? What's the line? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, you can debate what the distinction is between the two. The main thing to consider is that developed and developing would imply a progression towards a specific type of society, right? So you're looking at developed countries as the industrialized countries with like capitalist institutions and democracy and those kind of things. So developing implies that every country should be like that, right? And I personally agree that they should be. So right. I'm cool with that term, right?
Okay. I honestly, I don't know enough about it to argue the point either way.
Yeah, like I'm sure there's some wiggle room in how you set up an economy or a government, but by and large, there's certain things that we've done in the Western world that are really good ideas, like the rule of law and things like that. So.